Hey everybody, I wanted to spend a little bit of time showing you how to do a rank calculation. This is something I do in Tableau with just about every dashboard I create will have at least one type of rank calculation. So I'm going to kind of go over it and give you the high level of how to do it, why we do it, and kind of what purpose it serves, okay? So as you can see, I've connected to data set Global Superstore. This data set gets used a lot in Tableau. There's several books on Tableau where that's literally the only data set they use. It's a very clean data set, so that's probably why a lot of people use it, which I completely understand. That's what we'll use. You can find a lot of examples out there. So I'm going to start with product name. I'm going to put product name up on the column shelf. And it's saying, hey, this is pretty big. Do you want to add all this? I'm going to say, yeah, add it all. So you can see got a lot of truncation, a lot of stuff that's not showing up. But let's also look at, let's say, profit of each individual product. Okay. So you can see I've got this huge chart. I would have to scroll an extensive amount to see everything. Don't turn this in. This is worthless. Okay. So a couple things I want to do is first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and swap my rows and columns to get a view like this. All right. So a little bit better, but what's happening? By default, Tableau is going to sort for you based upon alphabetical, in this case, of the product name. So if you give it an alphabetical field and a numeric field, it's always going to, by default, sort alphabetically in this order, all right? Again, this doesn't add a lot of value to me. So I'm going to come down here to profit. I'm going to flip it this way. So now I have my highest profit item at the top, okay? Another thing I commented on several homeworks on is you see all these fields where I've got these little dots here, these ellipsis points. That's truncation. Okay. We don't want to do this. So is what I want to do is I'm going to bring my mouse into here and I get my two-way arrow and I'm just going to drag this out. And this is the one of the few things I don't like about Tableau is, in Excel, if you just simply double click, it'll auto fit. Okay, so here you can see I've got most of these in here. I get down here and I've got some more, but I'm going to pause on that for just a minute and you'll see why. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to add some labeling here. So I'm going to take profit and I'm going to drop it to my label. Okay, now profit we know is a dollar value thing. So by default, you see what's happening is Tableau is giving me the profit, but it's giving it to me that in an improper format. So I want to come here, click on this. I want to go to format. And then when I come up here to where it says numbers, and if I do currency standard, what I get is these profit numbers that are with decimal places. Well, if I'm talking about, in this case, my top number, $25,000 profit, do I really need to know that there's 93 cents? Of course not. So I'm going to come to custom. I'm going to knock this down and end with this. So I'm going to just give whole numbers. All right. So that's a little bit better. So now if I ask you, which one of these products has the highest profit, you all could say, well, the Canon Image Class Advanced Copier. But if I ask you what number 7 was, I'm guessing what most of you, including myself, would have to do is come up here and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, not very effective. So let's look at an easier way to make this visualization pop for us using the rank calculations. So I'm going to close my view here. I'm going to come down here to my white space and simply right click. I'm going to say create calculated field, and I'm going to name this rank. Next, I come in here and I just simply need to type the word index with an open parenthesis and a closed parenthesis. I get my statement here that says the calculation is valid, which is exactly what I want to see. And I say, okay. Now, this next step is very important. This is probably the most common question I get when I teach this class. Someone will follow that step flawlessly, and they will do this. They will try to display a rank on the dashboard. They'll drop it in, and then you get this weird view. And people will say, Professor, I don't know what's going on here. This does not look like your example. Okay, so I'm going to back this up. What you have to do is one more thing. You have to come down here to rank, click the down arrow. Rank is what we call a discrete element. So I need to flip it to discrete, and you can see when I do that, it turns blue. All right. I can tell it's a calculated field because I've got the number sign and the equal sign right next to it. So I'm going to grab rank and I'm going to pull it up here and I'm going to put it next to product name. Let's see what this does for me. A real nice view. Okay. So let's clean this up a little bit more. And I want to do a couple more things here. So I want to add color. I've got my default Tableau blue, which you should know by now I'm not a fan of. So I'm going to take profit and I'm going to drop it on the color shelf. And I'm going to click on color and let's change this a little bit. Let's go with a red, green diverging. I'm going to reverse it. No, actually, I like it this way. Take it this way and say, okay. All right. So I've done a lot of good things here. I like what I've got. The thing I don't like is what do I got here? I still got this scroll bar. Okay. So what's the problem with the scroll bar? If I bring this into a dashboard over here, I drop this in and now suddenly I've got all of this. Well, what happens with a Viz? You're rarely presenting it in Tableau. You're usually going dashboard, you're exporting the image, and where does this end up? In a PowerPoint slide. So if I export this image, all I'm going to see is what's on my screen, and I lose a lot. So if it doesn't show up in my view, let's get rid of it. All right, so I can do this a number of ways. How I like to do it is just simply use a filter. So I'm going to take profit. I'm going to bring profit up to filters. And I'm going to say next. And now I'm going to say I want at least, and this is a little bit of trial and error, but what I like about this is I can click and drag. I can say apply. And I start to get a little bit better view here. So I'm liking where this is going. All right. Now, here's what's interesting is this copier has a huge profit versus some of these others that don't. Okay. Now, it doesn't take a genius in business to know I'm perfectly happy with $7,000 plus almost $8,000 in profit. Okay. So what I might do, this is what we would call an outlier, right? So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to say exclude. And now look what happens. I start to see a little bit of division here. Okay. The other thing I see is I've still got a little bit of issue with some truncation here. So I'm going to play with this a little bit and see if I can get some of these ellipsis points to disappear for me. Okay. I'm almost there. In a later unit, I'm going to show you how you can actually change some of the names of these, okay? So what I don't like is look how far out I'm having to come to get this one in there. I'm using a lot of space for this, okay? So like I said, I'm going to show you in another unit how we can actually alter that as well, all right? So I'm going to rename my sheet. I'm going to call this top profit. And I like to alter this a little bit as well. I'm going to center it, bold it, and let's bump that font size up a little bit. See how that looks. I like it. Okay, so now let's bring this into a dashboard. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to bring top profit in. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, a couple of things I don't like with this. Number one, I've got some white space down here that's wasted. So I could do one of two things. I could go back to my Viz. I could add some more rows to this. All right. The other thing I can do is I can simply come in here, click the down arrow. I can say fit, and I can say entire view. All right. The other thing I'm not so much of a fan of is I've got this legend up here. All right. It's taken up a lot of space. I can do a couple of things with this. I can just simply get rid of it. And away we go. Another option I have, I can come up here. I can click the down arrow and I can make this floating. So now I can bring this legend down here if I want. It's still using this space because this is called a container. I want to get rid of the container, just like this, and it automatically resizes me. See how we get a real nice view there? And I can move my legend there. Now, we might argue, do I even need this legend, right? I'm well labeled. I've got a good color scheme. I probably don't even need this. So I can just go ahead and zap that out of my way. Okay, so that is how you create rank. I've also showed you how to leverage a filter here as well. Now I want to go back and show you one more thing. When I made my filter here for profit, okay, if I go to edit filter, all right, you can see these were my values. Now, I might want to play with this and drag this out a little more, see if I can get a couple more rows. That looks good. All right. But in doing that, what happens is every time I want to change that, I've got to come back to my dashboard or my chart, excuse me, and say edit filter, and then come in here and manipulate this. I don't like that. Okay. I want a nice dynamic dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here. I'm going to say show filter. And here's my filter control. Go back to my dashboard. Okay. And I think this is going to make me re-add this. So let's just make a new dashboard here. Drop this in. Okay, there's my filter control. Again, I'm going to say we can get rid of the legend. Filter control I like. Just like my legend, I can make this floating. All right. So before I place that where I want it, let's come in here and let's resize this. We're going to fit and say entire view. Now let's deal with my filter, or excuse me, my filter control. Bring this down here. So now what I can do is alter this way. Okay. Gave it a pretty big chast to chew on there. So it's looks like it's hung up a little bit. So we're going to move this back. There we go. Okay. So what I like about the dynamic filter option is never fails. You sit at your desk as a visualization analyst, you create the dashboard without a dynamic filter. You go into the boss's office and he or she says, that's really nice, but could you show me profit between $8,000 and $500? Well, we only went to 1,500 and change. So what does that mean? It means you got to go back to your desk, you got to rework it and come back. You go into the boss's office with this and says, well, show me down to $500. I can simply click and drag, and there we go. And obviously your boss isn't going to want to look at that. So we can alter this however we see fit. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good overview here. And as always, please let me know if you have any questions.